conflict and also during the Korean War. So, Shelley, thank you very much for allowing me to come here.
My pleasure.
Like to let the audience know too, that for the record, that you're a good, close family friend. You knew my father, who also served in the Air Force. So thank you very much for allowing me to come here. It's an honor and a privilege. So to jog your memory, can you tell us, please, whether you were drafted or were you enlisted for the service?
I enlisted, Gary. I enlisted because I wanted to fly. This will come out in the story, so-called.
Well, you can start wherever you like. It's your story. You start wherever you want in your story, and tell us whatever you'd like to include in your story.
Well, because of my hearing, Gary, could I read these questions to myself and then explain as I go along? You won't have to ask, and I won't have to try to hear.
Okay.
But it said I was drafted or enlisted. Okay, I enlisted. I was living at home. Well, no, I wasn't. I was at school, at the university, at the time that I enlisted.
University of New Hampshire?
Yes. I enlisted because I wanted to go to flying school. And it looked as though I could. Why did you pick the service? I picked the service because that's where they taught you to fly. Your father knew that. I do recall my first days because it was when I found it was my first days was when I had a final physical, and they found that I was slightly colorblind, and that did it for the flying.
I see.
What did I feel like? It felt like I had been shot before a firing squad. It killed me. I wanted to fly so badly that I got into the program. Actually, I got into pre-flight, and we had a final physical, and I passed some of the. Well, I'll say that they had a book that you should see the numbers, and if you saw the right numbers, you had good vision. If you saw the wrong numbers, you had color vision. You had bad color vision. I could see many of the good numbers, but not enough, and so I did not pass the color vision test, and I was out. And I was an aviation cadet at that point, and I was relegated to that of a private. $21 a day, once a month. $21. A private got $21 a month.
Wow.
Now this is being recorded, isn't it?
Yep, we are. We're on. We're live.
What did it feel like? Well, it felt like I'd been put before a firing squad.
It's asking
Tell about your
boot camp. Do you remember boot camp?
What was this last word? Tell me.
Boot camp. Tell me about your boot camp experience. Boot camp or training experience. It's two words together.
Oh, camp training experiences. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Do you remember anything in particular about boot camp or your cadet training?
Well, I remember them because after I fooled around as a private down on the line, gassing up the airplanes that I was supposed to fly, which was killing me to do, I got a chance to go to officer candidate school. And so I was able to go. And then that was when we had all the instructors, And the school was held in Miami Beach, Florida, and they used one of the golf courses for where we had our training. We ran everywhere, as you can understand. Your dad probably went through the same thing in his pre-flight days. But we ran everywhere, and we had little small tar paper shacks for classrooms on a big, classy Florida big grass golf courses. And do I remember the instructor? Remember a lot of the instructors. They were civilians, a lot of them, and they didn't know bananas about military. They came in there with their hat on backwards, and they couldn't salute and come up with their hand and hit the thing, and the hat would fall off and things like that. But how did you get through? With God's help, I got through. Because it was 3 months, and the school was run by a bunch of West Pointers. And either they were unhappy by being assigned to that particular that type of duty, or whatever. But they were tough. They were almost on a basis of being mean. You couldn't do this. You couldn't do that. You had to do everything the West Point way. This was way back in those days.
Mm-hmm.
And the last question here is, how'd you get through? I don't know. Or just by good luck and kept their mouth shut when they should have. But in retrospect, I enjoyed it because I never was in better shape, physical shape, because we never walked anywhere. We either marched or we ran everywhere, all over Miami Beach. And that doesn't mean the beach, that means the city of Miami Beach, because the Air Force took over all of the hotels. And I lived in one of the hotels on the 4th floor, had elevators off limits. You went up on your own, you walked on the elevators. You didn't use the elevators, you went to your room.
No kidding.
I had a room on the 4th floor.
Wow.
But I say, at the end when we got commissioned in September, I was never in better shape. Brown as a nut because we're in shorts most of the time out on the golf course, not playing golf, but going to class. And good food, lots of food, lot of exercise and running, and ate a lot, but it was good food. And in retrospect, I was never in better shape.
Very good.
How did you get through? Well, just by luck, and I toed the mark. I did what I was supposed to do, and it panned out right.
Very good.
Experiences. No, let's see. Want me to go on, continue on? Here,
Please, yeah, at your own pace here. Go ahead.
It says what experience? What this?
It says,
It says that I served in World War II and in the Korean, but not in Korea, but in the Korean War. Where did you go? Well, I spent most of World War II in Europe, in England, Great Britain, and then in the Korean conflict, I was in the training command up in Upper New York State. Do you remember serving in what it was like? Yes, I do, of course. When you in England, in Europe, I worked in the group operations office of an operational fighter group. And your father never could understand how I was in operations, because that always means flying. But there are a lot of things to do in operations, but except flying. There was a lot of maintenance work and paperwork and all this sort of thing. And fortunately, I couldn't fly, but I was right next to the airplanes all the time. I was lucky to have a job with the airplanes. And so I was sort of an administrative officer in a fighter group. What did I do? Where did you go? Well, I say, we took the Queen Elizabeth out of New York, and 5 days later we were in Scotland, and then took a train ride down into mid-England, the industrial Midlands, where we went to a fighter base, which had an abandoned RAF base, and it got to be too small for some of the RAF airplanes, but it was big enough for our fighters. 5,000-foot runway was big enough for our fighters. And it was right about in the industrial Midlands, in middle of England. And I stayed there for 2 years to the day. Went in one day, and 2 years later, we got on a boat, went across the channel, went to Germany. Where'd you go?
Well, I was wondering, Shelley, can you tell us briefly what kind of fighter planes were at your base?
Oh, all right. What kind of aircraft?
Yeah.
Well, we went over and we had, actually the last part of the training in Philadelphia, the period of training before we would go overseas, we had P-40s. That's the kind that the fighter, I can't think of the name now. It's a very old airplane. We just had those for a little while. Then we got P-47s.
Okay.
And we took the P-47s overseas and flew those for about a year. Then we got the P-51s, which had the range. We could accompany the bombers all the way to and back, because the 47, the big 2,000 horsepower engine, used a lot of fuel. It would only go just so far and have to turn around and come home. And the Germans knew just exactly when the fuel was going to run out. They hung around and didn't bother anybody, but the minute they saw it turn back, then they swooped down on the bombers. Well, when we fooled them, we got the P-51, it could go all the way to the back, and that's when we really started to do some business. So, exactly where did you go? Well, the field of battle was over Europe, over England and, no, over France. Over France and Holland and Germany. Do you remember?
Can you,
Where did it go? I'm way ahead here.
yeah, you're right at, tell me about a couple of your most memorable experiences.
Well, the second one down there, and that last bunch of questions is,
Yeah.
where did you go? I went too far on the thing here.
Yeah. It's okay. You got that covered.
Where it went.
You got that covered.
That said, where'd you go? It was.
Yeah, we got that.
Where'd you serve? World War II and Korea. World War II was basically with the fighter group
Right.
in Great Britain.
Right.
And
So were there many casualties in your unit?
on
Look at the next question down. Were there very many casualties in your unit? You see that there? Yeah, I'll mark it for you. Were there many casualties?
Okay. Well, the only casualties that there would be when we lost a pilot in an airplane. And unfortunately, we did have, well, after the war got really boiling over there, I think there were probably 8 or 9 fighter groups in the ETO, in the European theater. And we were the third ones over there. We were early. And so when the casualties started, we started getting them. And we had a normal amount, if you such a thing as a normal amount of casualties. We lost a normal number of pilots. And it was just one of those things where it was too bad that you just get to know a guy and all of a sudden he doesn't show up for breakfast.
Ah. Was there any can you estimate any numbers for us?
Many casualties. Well, what was many? I think the answer is we had an average number of casualties, and of course they were all pilots.
Yeah.
It was just hard to lose them. That's all. And
Take that.
well, the next question here, Gary, is tell me about a couple of your most memorable experiences. Well, you see, being a non-flyer in a flyer outfit, it doesn't seem like it have many experiences. Well, I couldn't keep my trap shut, like I couldn't stop from volunteering. So I volunteered, oh, let me go back a minute. Our air base was next to a big bomber base, a big B-17 bomber base. And I got to know some of the people out next to them, and I said, I wanted to go on a mission. Oh, you want to go on a mission, huh? All right, we'll take it. And so they let me go on one. And as it turned out, it was one of the longest ones they ever went to. It was a place called Mersburg. I can't think of the other name, but it was way down in the southeastern part of Germany, near Munich.
Near Munich, okay.
You were over there.
Okay.
And it was one of the most, of course, I'm dumb how you're sitting there and didn't know what to do. But they were short a bombardier in that crew. And they made me the bombardier for that day. So I dropped the bombs on the city of Mersburg. And I can remember today, I was sitting there in that little bicycle seat in the front of the airplane, and with my left hand is lever, and they wanted me to toggle them all out, all at once, not all at once. And so I left the bombs, 10 tons, I guess, 10 tons of B-17 load of bombs on the city of Mersburg. That was one of them. Then
was there any?
Try to get another thing. My fraternity brother, my best friend at university, my fraternity brother, Joe Garrison, got to be a B-17 pilot. And after I'd been over there about a year, Joe got in, his unit was sent over to England. And I got to find out where he was. And we got together, old buddies, you know. And I said, Joe, I want to go on a mission with you. All right. So I went on 2 missions with him. I didn't drop the bombs, but I was into all the other. He let me sit and let me be one of the waist gunners and up front in the cabin up front. And it was a wonderful experience. But for a ground pounder like me, to be able to go on 3 operational missions was quite something. For me, it was anyway.
So what happened during those missions? Do you have any memories of those?
Oh, yeah, a couple of memorable experiences. Well, that memorable experience was when I went on the first mission. I dropped the bombs.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
They didn't need a bombardier in the other missions, but I fired the waist guns. You know, a B-17 had 2 waist guns on both sides. And planes coming at you, trying to find them. Memorable experiences, Gary.
So, Shelley, you were under attack then. The German fighter planes were attacking your bombers.
Yes. Oh yeah, they were after us.
Mm-hmm.
Were you a prisoner? No, thank goodness. Tell me about your experience. Captivity. No, as I told you when you called the first time, I was no hero, Gary. I didn't get any medals or citations. Well, we got our outfit, our group, our fighter group, got 2 presidential unit citations because we were really pretty good. I think, as I said, I think there are 9 fighter groups in the European, and we were one of the 9, but we were the 3rd one to go over.
Right.
The first one was the 4th, the second was the 327th, and the third one was the 355th. We were the 355th, the 3rd fighter group to go over. And this group that I was in all the time, I started in with the group when it was formed in Florida and stayed in it until I was released from the military. And we got 2 presidential unit citations. Oh, I know, because by the end of the war, we had been credited with 960 destroyed German aircraft. You either had a destroyed, a damaged, probable or damaged. And you had to damn well have them destroyed, be confirmed by one of the other guys flying along with you, or it didn't count. It was a probable. 900, and we were third in the ETO with number of victories, and we were only third by, the people that were second were only 2 more than we did. So we were almost tied with second in the European theater for the number of victories.
Wow.
And we were rather proud of that. So the unit got 2 presidential unit citations.
Well, you were also telling me, Shelley, about the battle stars that you earned.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
The citation, how did you get them? Well, the pilots got them because they shot down 960 confirmed German aircraft.
Wow.
Now, how many ranks maybe, higher ranks maybe not.
Now, yeah, this question is about battle planning. I don't suppose you were involved with that.
I'm sorry?
It talks about battle planning. Were you involved with that at all?
Is that the bottom one, Gary?
Yeah, battle planning.
Higher ranks may be asked about battle planning. Oh. May be asked about the second thing. Well, I didn't have any injuries, but battle planning. No, I didn't get involved. I was only a captain then, and I didn't get involved in the mission planning.
Okay.
The mission was basically planned at the wing headquarters, and that came down early in the morning to the group headquarters, our group, and we had a very early briefing of the mission that we got from the group, from the wing, and then we took that information down to our squadron. We had 3 squadrons, and they had a final smaller squadron briefing that specifically who would fly where and the formation and that sort of thing.
Now, Shelley, let me ask you something. Shelley, what was the name of the base where you were stationed in England?
The base was named for the little town that it was, and I mean little. It wasn't even a town. It was just a village, Steeple Morden, M-O-R-D-E-N, and it was in a wheat farm area, and big fields, and of course, and that was great for flying.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Airfields. And it had been a bomber base for the British, and their airplanes got big enough so that the runways weren't big enough to take the British bombers, so they abandoned the base, and we took it over because the fighters needed a shorter runway, but we still needed good, strong 5,000 feet. 5,000 feet. And
The runway had to be 5,000 feet long?
yes.
I see.
And it was usually you had it made a triangle too, but the big runway was the one we used most of the time. And,
Okay.
It was a nice country. It was a relatively flat country. As I say, they grew wheat there, and it was in a rural area. It was typical rural England. We're about 40 miles north of London. And when London was being bombed, we could see the bombs, and then you hear the thunder later. You know how light falls faster than sound. So you see the light, and then boom, you hear the sound later. And once in a while, an enemy airplane would get lost, I guess, but he'd get up further up and get over us, and he'd get caught in the searchlights. And I don't recall that they ever shot one down as a result of being into the flat searchlights, but I was told that when the German guy was flying up there and he had 2 or 3 searchlights, he could drive him nuts, get vertigo seeing. But I remember many times that we'd hear the air raid warning would go off. Air raid warning red, air raid warning red. Well, that meant we were supposed to get out of bed and go into the bomb shelters. I never did. Oh, cripe. Air raid warning red. The thing that really could scare us was when they had the buzz bombs, the U-2s, the flying bombs.
Right, right.
And they were very easy to hear. They had a very distinctive noise that sounded like a bad run, an engine that was running very poorly.
Yeah.
And then when you stopped hearing that noise, then you look out, because then it meant the engine stopped and then the bomb was coming down.
Yeah, right.
So once in a while, we'd hear the buzz bombs, we call them, would come. And then you just hope that you could keep on hearing them, because if you keep on hearing them, they're carrying over you, see. And once in a while, they'd stop. And the curtains would shake,
Yeah.
but we didn't have much damage, but you never knew until it was over. But it was interesting in a way, but I shouldn't say we just put the covers over our head for that. When you heard the buzz bombs, you get the hell out, because you didn't know when those engines were gonna quit.
So, did this happen frequently? Or
At the end of the war, it was rather frequent. That's when Hitler started bombing England again. Of course, he stopped, and he made up his mind, which was one of the best decisions he ever made for us, to go after the Russians instead of going. He could have taken Great Britain. Great Britain could have been invaded if Hitler had done it when he had the chance.
right.
But something went wrong up here, thank God. They decided to go after the Russians. And so we didn't have all that activity. London was saved by virtue of his decision, because we'd have had to get the Germans out of Great Britain before we could even do anything.
Yeah, right.
Never mind
Right.
running the invasion.
Yep. Well, the next segment of the interview is about life in the military. It has questions about why you were at the front, what would be a typical day be like for you, or did you stay in touch with your family? Things like that.
Is there something I can read that can help you?
Yep, here it is. Segment 4, right there at the top.
Okay. Well, you know, it's a funny thing. The first question, how do I stay in touch with my family? Well, mail was the only thing. And
Yeah.
I look back now, my family, the family I had then, mother, father, grandparents, aunt, uncle, they're all gone now, of course. I didn't write as much as I should have, as many times as I should have. I never wrote a letter to my aunt. And looking back at what she did for me after the war, and when Susan was born, and all that sort of thing, she was wonderful to us, and I never even wrote to her.
Oh.
And it makes me feel bad now, but she's gone. But I wrote my mother, and but really, I don't think I wrote her terribly often. I just wasn't very good at that. That's all.
Did you receive letters from them?
Pardon?
Did you receive letters
Yes. Yeah.
from them?
I got as much mail as I should have.
Yeah,
I'm sure the mail worked.
yeah.
What was the food like? Well, you know, Gary, we were overseas, and if we ever had a bad meal, we shouldn't have complained, because we were too close to the people on the continent that were eating K rations or eating nothing, or in prison camps eating crap.
Yeah.
So our food was acceptable for sure. In fact, it was good. We had 3 meals a day, and we had a good mess hall, and did you have plenty of supplies? Yes. Did you feel pressure or stress? No, as a matter of fact, we didn't.
Was there something special you did for good luck?
there was, Gary. I kept thinking, well, we were so close to the battle zone across the channel that we didn't really have it too damn tough. We didn't have it very tough. We had nothing to complain about. We slept in beds. We weren't sleeping on the ground. We had good food. We weren't overly warm in the winter because they just didn't have, the buildings we were in weren't particularly well heated, but we had no complaints. We weren't sleeping in a foxhole,
Right.
weren't sleeping on the ground. We really had it pretty damn good.
How did people entertain themselves?
Well, we had a movie hall, had a movie about every night, and the USO, they call it the USO, United Service Organization, yeah. They sent a show around infrequently, out of a vaudeville show, not very good, but again, we weren't complaining. The guy
Yeah.
100 miles south, sleeping on the ground, getting killed. We weren't.
So for the entertainers,
the entertainers,
you
yes,
mentioned
yes.
vaudeville. What?
Occasionally, what did you do? Oh, the only thing you did was go to London.
So when you were on leave, you'd go.
Because we were about 40 miles north of London, and I don't think, looking back now, I say, why the hell didn't I go to London more often? Well, London was a dirty as hell, you know. It'd been under wartime for 3 or 4 years. They were getting the hell kicked out of them for 2 years before we even got there.
Right.
And
Right.
so, and they still got bombed now and then, and there were hundreds of people, of course, and all blacked out. You go out there at night and bumping into people, everything is blacked out.
Hmm.
And it wasn't a, well, I kept saying, we weren't there as tourists. So I think I probably went to London as many as 5 times in 2 years.
Hmm.
I was in England 2 years to the day.
Right.
I went from there across the channel to Germany. And I had all I should have had of London.
Was it easy to get down there?
When did you travel?
Yeah, what-
Well, the only traveling that I did, which you don't, the way you don't do it today, now you travel all over the place, but where did you travel while in the service? Well, the only travel I did was across the ocean, and then to our little place at Steeple Morden, and to London, and back 5 times, it's like 5 times or something. And I guess, yeah, we had a chance. I'm trying to skip something here. Somehow or other, we get a hold of a war-weary B-26. It's a bomber, like your father. I think your father flew a B-26, didn't he? Yeah. But we got a hold of a a war-weary B-26. And of course, fighter pilots, one pilot, one airplane. So our guys didn't have any other kind of airplane to fly. So our mechanics worked on this airplane. They took all the armament out, took all the armor out, and made the thing really move, because those things, 2,000 horsepower engines, and that sucker would really go. Your father could tell you, that thing really would move.
Mm-hmm.
It's glided like a rock, and it'd take off like a jaybird. But at any rate, occasionally, it wasn't really made for passengers either, but we could stuff 4 or 5 extra people in the thing, and we'd go up north into Scotland, and saw Scotland, and the people were nice. There wasn't much war up there, of course, it was too far up north. Occasionally they said they got bombed during the early part of the war, but we didn't see any of it, and I'm sure they did if they said they did. So
Do you remember what,
go up to Scotland. I remember, I wish now, in retrospect now, I wish I'd gone to see Shakespeare's birthplace, just for the hell of it. I wouldn't go now, but travel there, again, I kept saying, we were not over there as tourists. We were over there to do something else. So
Do you remember
where did
any-
we go on lady? Well, not very many places. London was the place. Where did you travel? Well, where did you travel? I traveled across the ocean, and that was about it.
any particular spots in Scotland that names you can remember?
What's that?
Do you remember any of the names of the places in Scotland that you visited?
I can't, Gary.
No.
So long ago, I can't. Oh, I can't. I can't.
So you and your friends got a hold of this plane somehow, and you would take it for a ride, and you'd go someplace while you had leave. Is that how it worked? While you were on leave?
Recall any particularly humorous or unusual event? Some of the pranks you were the other photographs now. Well, I can change that question about the pranks or the humorous events a little bit. I always loved motorcycles. And of course, we had MPs, we had military police as part of our base personnel. And they used to they had maybe 5 or 6 motorcycles. And they kept them in a tent. And as was the case with most military vehicles, there were no keys. Because you never could have cars, you'd lose keys and you could, just a switch. Well, in a nice summer night, not much doing, the airplanes were quiet, so old Prescott gets that idea he'd like to ride a motorcycle. Well, I weighed about 100 pounds, 110, 105, and this big Harley was a big hog. Well, I got the thing out, cranked it up, and off I went. I went on the base. The base was on I had to go up an incline to get up onto a plateau where the base was. So I got up and I got up and headed down toward the town. And the thing got away from me. And I went tearing down through the main street of this little town, little village. It came to a corner, and I didn't lean it. I couldn't lean it. Didn't want to go. I leaned and didn't want to go. And I got off to the side of the road, and I got riding on top of a little stone wall. And I finally had to dump it, and I dumped it right back in the main street. Down I went, Jesus, it skunned my elbow, my knees, drove the bolt that holds the rock emblem on right into my head. Blood coming down both sides. And 2 girls watching all this, laughing like hell. Son of a bitch. And I was really in trouble. I had stolen the motorcycle, and I dumped it, and it hurt it. Well, what to do? I wasn't unconscious, but I was damn unhappy because I busted up my good pair of pink pants, and I'm bleeding, elbows gone up. Well, I've tried to think at night when I'm lying there going to sleep. I try to think how the hell I got that thing out of there. And somehow or other, I got the thing off to the side of the road, and I just don't remember, Gary. I tried to remember how I did it, but I got the thing up to the tent that they kept him in to my good friend, Sergeant Kiley. He was a motorcycle mechanic. And I had made friends with him and used to go up and talk with him and everything, because we liked motorcycle. And he said, I'll take care of you. Because the front wheel was bent, and there was other broken things on it. And Sergeant Kiley bailed me out so far as getting a motorcycle taken care of. But what about me?
Mm.
So I had to get myself into the dispensary and get patched up, and I spoiled a perfectly good pair of pinks. Your father had pinks and greens, you probably wore some of them.
Yeah, I think I did.
Corduroy pants, oh, gee, they were good pants, but I spoiled them and ripped up. Well, that wasn't exactly humorous, but that was something that didn't happen more than once, thank goodness. So I had that famous motorcycle ride, but I remember that it wouldn't, every once in a while, we were company grade officers, people who were second lieutenant, first lieutenant, and captain were company grade. Major, lieutenant colonel, they were field grade. Well, I was still a company grade, and I got to be officer of the day and all the small crap details. So one night, when I was in the summer, when I was officer of the day, and that meant you had to sleep had to sleep in the same building with the old captain who was in charge of the motor police. He's an older man, captain, and he snored like a son of a gun. So he never went to sleep. He just lay. So at any rate, I couldn't sleep. So I got up and I went down and a friend of mine, one of my enlisted men friends, was on duty that night, and he was corporal of the day. So he and I went out riding our motorcycles out in the country, because we were out in the country, and we had a good time riding our motorcycle. And I didn't get in any trouble at the, nobody found out, but I had a good lot of fun with this young kid. And I remember he ran over a rabbit, and he killed the rabbit, and he went back and he got it, and he told me later that he skinned it and ate it. I don't know whether he did or not, but that was one night to be remembered. When moonlight night, you know, quiet as hell, and I was really riding around the countryside. I don't know how the hell I ever got promoted, because I did things that I never should have done, but I never got caught.
I guess you were lucky, Shelley.
Where are we here, Gary? Pressure or stress?
No, we're down further. What did you think of officers or fellow soldiers? Second to the last question. Segment 4. Want me to show you?
Oh, here we are, yeah.
What did you think of officers or fellow servicemen? You remembered that one fellow you went riding your motorcycle with.
Well, this.
Is there anybody else?
What did you think of officers or leaders? Well, as far as I can remember, and I think back a lot about it, that we had a hell of a good bunch of people.
Yeah.
Because the pilots were, of course, they wouldn't have gotten to be fighter pilots if they weren't pretty good people. That is, capable and straight. And they drank some, but they didn't drink too much, so they wouldn't be able to fly. And I don't think that. I'm trying to think quickly here.
Do you recall any particular?
The officers of well, again, where I was in this same outfit for one. Well, I was in this. Well, that's another story. I was in this 355th Fighter Group for most of it long, and so made a lot of friends, and kept the friendships, and until the war was over. And when we went over took the group over to overseas across to the continent. Well, that's another short story, if I may.
Yes, please.
We found out that we were gonna move to Germany. That sounded good because I wanted to see some more of the world. The day we left England was exactly 2 years. We had been at Stephen Martin for 2 years to the day. And so I made it known that I wanted to go on the voyage to Germany. I didn't know where, but I wanted to go over to Germany. So the old colonel that was setting up the whole thing said, "All right, Prescott, you want to go, huh? Well, you're going to be the commander then." So he made me the commander of the convoy. Now this convoy was about 40 vehicles, trucks, everything, overloaded, and to get as much of our stuff overseas that we had overseas across the channel and all the way across France, and all the way across Germany and down to the south of Germany to right near Munich. Now you've probably been there.
Yeah.
Well, the little town, it was an abandoned German air base, was Gablingen, and it was near Munich. Well, me, commander of the convoy, yeah, you want to go, you're going to be a commander.
Time for lunch. Time for lunch.
Lunchtime.
What-
Okay. All right.
So, long story short, he made me the commander, all right. He gave me one other officer, and there was about 40 enlisted men. We had all these vehicles, and one other officer, he was a doctor. He didn't know squat about being an officer. So it was me and the doctor. His name was, of all playing, Payne, Dr. Payne. We had some kind of time, I'll tell you. It took about a week to get across the channel, across Germany, across France, Germany, and down to Germany. And it took us about a week. We had a lot of, well, we had some experiences. We had a wreck, and we had, what do you want? What's the matter? So-called tour in Europe.
Yeah, we left off
Well, I told you that we were slated to move to Germany.
in a big convoy.
I'd been in England long enough, and I wanted to see some more of the world. So I asked if I could be on, some of the stuff would go by air, but most of it would go by ground, and if I could be on it, if I could be on the convoy. This old grizzled old captain of the military police, he was organizing the thing. He looked at me and said, "All right, you want to go on? You be the commander." Oh! Well, it wasn't that bad, but it took me by surprise because I was the only officer on the whole freaking thing. One doctor, he didn't know bananas about being an officer, and he was a captain, but they made him captain. So we had a great time. But we started out, but in the first place, they had no maps whatsoever. All I was told was that this air base was in the southeastern portion of Germany, in a town called Gablingen. It was north of Munich. Thanks a lot. Now, of course, we got to get across the channel, across France, across Germany, and south. No maps. So, first thing they did, we had to go from our airfield down to the channel, and the British, for no reason whatsoever, they split my convoy in half and put half on one boat and half on another just to go across the channel. I think to get the price of two for one. They could easily put the whole bloody bunch of us on one boat, but no. And one thing I really terribly sorry about that happened on the way across the channel. For one reason or other, I figured I better go down into the hold and see what's going down there. So I had a Jeep, my own Jeep, and a driver. I found the Jeep. The top had been cut. My barracks bag had been opened up, and it took all my flying equipment. And I had a whole set of flying equipment because I used it. Goggles, helmet, Mae West, dinghy, everything gone. And I felt bad about that because I wanted to bring that home. I could have brought it home, it was mine.
Yeah,
Nothing.
yeah.
At any rate,
That's too
I
bad.
can't cry over spilt milk, that was 50 years ago. But we got across the channel and we went in to where the invasion was on Omaha Beach. We went in on Omaha Beach exactly 1 year to the day after the invasion. June 6, 1945. The invasion was June 6, 1944.
44, right.
And the beach was just as calm as a mill pond, water rippling in there, you know, and then a year before it was rippling in red with blood. And of course, we lost over 5,000 Americans that one day on D-Day at Omaha. 5,000 American boys died that day.
Yeah.
At any rate, we got on the convoy. And, there wasn't that much else that happened. I remember overlooking the first night. I got on a hillside overlooking Omaha Beach, and I just think, gee, 1 year ago today the world was going to hell, and today it's just as peaceful as can be. Well, then the proverbial S hit the F, and we started to go east. I never could possibly go through more wrecked countryside, northern France. That's where the war was. There was one road, the Red Ball Highway, road from right across northern France to Germany and back and forth. And we get on the Red Ball Highway. And I remember nobody told me I couldn't do what I wanted. I was the boss. I wanted to buy my motorcycle, I wanted to ride it, and I did. And every time I rode it for about an hour, and I get a flat tire. And that made me mad as hell. But at any rate, that was incidental. But we got along on that a couple of days, slept on the ground, slept in the ambulance, ate K rations. We made all right, but we kept going east, because we were going to go across France, and then across Germany, and then down to Munich, down here in the south. All of a sudden, we realized, my guys got to tell me, we're getting low on gas, Captain. Yeah, because this old captain that set us up, he didn't give us any gasoline trucks, just a few GI cans, you know, jerry cans, 5-gallon cans. And how the hell he figured we were going to get any gas, God only knows. Well, it got to a point, Gary, where we were really had fumes in the gas tanks, and it was daylight, but it was getting dark, and we had run out of gas on northern France. Now, what the hell am I going to do with 40 vehicles out of gas and know nothing about where the gas dump or anything? So we got settled down for the night, and I got in my Jeep, and we settled down in a little town somewhere in France, and I just got riding around looking for something, looking for what? And I turned the corner, Gary, and this is the one part of my life where God was with me. I know it. I turned the corner, and what did I see? A gas dump for an armored division. Mountains of GI cans full of gas. Mountains of them. They're all stacked together just from a gas dump for an armored division. You know how much gas? Those tanks get about 5 miles to the gallon. Christ, how thank you, God. So, of course, I had enough gas to get the trucks to the dump, and boy, did we hog out. We filled up every tank we had, we took, and the point is, I looked around, is there anybody here? There's hardly nobody there. So I found there were two guys, two black, they were dressed soldiers. But I walk up to them, here I am, about 5'7", I walk up to them and I said, what, asking about, can we have some gas? And and all they told me was, me Maroc. They couldn't speak English, they were Moroccan. Oh, all right, thank you. And so we just took all the gas we wanted, because of all things, the next day they were going to turn that gas dump over to the British. We got there one day ahead, but I've thought of this so many times when I tried to go to sleep at night. What the hell would I have done if I had 40 vehicles out in northern France, out of gas? What the hell am I going to do? That was the high point of that trip, I'll tell you. It was a 5-day drive, a 5-day trip. But for once, our gasoline worries were over. We'd filled the tanks, we could have taken 25 jerry cans for each vehicle if we wanted, but we took all I told the guys, take all you can get in take all you can carry. Yes, sir. And we had plenty of gas. But just imagine, Gary, I'm out of gas, 40 vehicles.
Yeah.
In a foreign land, I'm a war-torn land,
Yeah.
and no gas, and nowhere the hell to go. And just to turn a corner, it's like a movie, it's like a dream. And mountains of nothing but gas tanks stacked side by side up as high as a house.
Your prayer.
That was the high point of my convoy, I'll tell you.
Your prayers were answered.
Current ripes. And that was, other than flying those missions, and the airplanes I was in got hit with flak, and we lost an engine. We had to come back. We didn't have to abort. We didn't go back early, but we had to come back on 3 engines. And fortunately, it was on the way back, because that's when you're the lightest you've lost. You left the bombs off, and you're all on gas, so you're lighter. Your father will tell you that. But the missions and that convoy were the things that stand out to me, and what I didn't do, but what I was involved with during the war and during my tour in Germany, tour in Europe. But I've relived that drive. That I took the Jeep. I had the Jeep myself. I drove around this little town. I turned the corner, and there it was. Couldn't believe my eyes. God had sent that to me.
Well, thank you, Shelley.
What else we got here?
Well, we're talking now about, I guess we can go to segment 5 after your service, or would you like to continue on with the Korean section? Segment 5. Here, I'll trade you.
Yeah.
You recall,
There.
what were you doing on the last day of
Oh,
service?
okay.
Segment 5. Do you recall the day your service ended? And where you were? What did you do in the days and weeks after you left?
Recall the day the service ended. Well, I guess it was at Fort Devens in Massachusetts there. I guess your father probably went through there
Yeah.
one time or another. And I was just part of our fighter group. We're all getting released at the time. What'd you do in the days and weeks afterward? Well, basically, what'd you do? Well, basically, most of us didn't take anywhere near the 30 days leave that we were authorized. There wasn't that much place to go and couldn't have that much time off either. So I had about 2 months of accrued leave. I had a bag full of money. And so,
So did you go back to
what
work?
did you do over the days and weeks afterwards? Well,
Did you go back to school, Shelley?
yeah, that's the biggest thing I did was come up here to Durham 2 or 3 times and make sure I got taken into school. Did you work? I go back. We didn't have time to go to work.
Mhm.
Back to school.
So
Your
you,
education by the GI Bill, yes. Did you make any? Yes, the close friendship I made, or remade, was my fraternity brother, who became my best friend at school here, who got to be that captain of the Beach B-17 that I flew with, and we got together 2 or 3 times. He was from Massachusetts also, and I tried to keep in touch with him. He went out west. He was married a peach of a girl, had a couple of kids, but he chose to move out west, and I think he moved to California. And I lost track of him. The university lost his address and stuff. But then about a year later, I got a friend at the university who had access to more records than the average, and they found out. I went up there one day and I said, I want to know, please tell me where Joe Garrison is. He found he died. He did. Now, I'm of the opinion, Gary, I may have said this before, that those of us, not me, it didn't affect me, but I didn't do enough of it, but people like your father who flew a full tour, and my friend Joe and hundreds of others, it affected their bodies, not necessarily their minds, but their bodies. They pull in the G's, the G factor, moving you inside. It brought on a relatively early death. I don't mean 35 or 40, but 50 or 55. Either gave you cancer. I think your dad had cancer, didn't he?
yeah, I did.
Well, I don't know whether my friend Joe Garrison had cancer, but he's dead. And he was younger than I was, because I worked for a couple of years before I went to school. And Joe went to prep school, and he went right from there into the university. So I was older than Joe, but so many of them, and I find that our organization had a fighter group organization, the 355th Fighter Group organization. And so many of those fellows, most of us joined it right off, but we kept, and we had an annual meeting, and we had a new, not a newspaper, but a flyer that would go out with information every so often about them. Every time 2 or 3 guys had died off.
Mhm.
And I still think that the war, particularly flying, contributed to a person's not at 50, not 50 years of age, but or 40s, but earlier than the normal age.
Yeah.
And your father was no exception. He died a little too young. But he was a war casualty, so far as I'm concerned. Your dad was. He did more than his share.
So, in later years, Shelley, segment 6, what did you go on to do as a career after the war?
Was that in here?
Yeah, segment 6.
Oh, down here.
Right there.
Well, actually, I spent another 2 years, I guess, 2.5 years at the university. And then, of all things, I got a job working at the university. And that lasted about 2 years. And then I got recalled for the Korean War. Did your military experience, if you should think of this, thinking about the war, about anything? Into it, you're thinking about the war. Well, probably, I don't know as I put it that way. in the Veterans Organization, well, I belong to the American Legion, and I figured the American Legion was largely responsible for the GI Bill. And I don't go to any, well, we had a Legion post in Durham, and started out with about 25 guys. And 2 or 3 of them died off, and I got down to where Ted Finnegan and myself were the only 2 guys alive. So we had to just no more Legion's post. So I actually gave, we had a little building that we bought years ago. It was an abandoned school, abandoned schoolhouse out in the country, and we bought it. Didn't have electricity, water, sewer, anything. And over the years, we put electricity in it and a well, and man, get it up to nice little post building. And then when the people started dying off, we didn't have any reason to have meetings anymore. 2 people, 3 people.
Yeah.
So we rented it. And of all things, the people that rented it, they rented it for a kindergarten.
Oh, okay.
And they spent $28,000 of their own money on our property to get it fixed up the way they wanted it. So it got down to a point where it was only Ted and I and a couple of other guys, and I said, look, this is crazy. So I made a motion, and it was accepted. I said we should give the building to these people outright. Anybody that's going to spend $28,000 on rent property they rent, they got to have some consideration. And sure enough, they went for it. And so I said, any expenses in like legal expenses or something, that the people who are going to give it to, they'll pay for it. It won't cost us anything. All right, okay. So we gave our building to these people. This 2 teachers they were, and it didn't cost them much legal money anyway. But I didn't figure we had to pay anything to give it away. So today that building is thin. It's been upgraded. It's a nice little school building now, out in the outskirts of Durham, and they have this nice kindergarten out there, and they own the building. We gave it to them outright, you know? And I think it was the right thing to do.
We're pretty much getting down to the end here. Is there anything you'd like to add that we haven't covered in this interview?
How did bottom segment 6?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I said, what did you do as a career after a while? I finished school, and then I got a job I became the so-called manager of the married. How do I say it? The married veterans housing. We had quite a number of married student housing apartments, and they needed a person to head it up, if you will. So I got that job, and I had that job for 2 years, and then I got recalled for the Korean War, but I didn't go to Korea, as you told you. I did not.
Right.
Where were you? I was at the university. What did you do the days and weeks after? Well, did you go to work or go back to school? I went.
Yeah, we covered that.
For the school. Was your education supported by the GI Bill? Half of it was, more than half. Make any close friendships? Yes, I did. Particularly this fellow, my fraternity brother, who I got to know before I went in the military, but he was as close as anybody.
Yeah.
And while in the friendships while in the service, well, yeah, a lot of friendships, but I've thought of it many times since. The guys that I was friendly with are not around here.
Yeah.
Some of them are in California, some of them are in Chicago, Ohio, Florida. So the answer to that is, where are they?
Do you remember any of their names? Shelley, do you remember any of their names?
Well, yeah, the first one that comes to mind is a fellow named Joseph Garrison.
Right, you mentioned him.
And
Yep.
we were good friends at school,
Yeah.
and then I went in the Air Force first, and he finished a little more school, and he came in the Air Force, and then that's when his group came over to where we were, and I went and flew with him. In the Veterans Organization, kind of activity, of course, well,
Well, you mentioned the
we don't have any now, but
American Legion.
we were a typical small American Legion post.
Yeah.
I remember we had the biggest thing that we had that the town knew about, we had a parade on Memorial Day. And more than once I was delegated to be the parade marshal. And for sometimes the parade marshal does nothing more than be an honorary thing. He rides around in the car. Well, in Durham, if you were the parade marshal, you organized the whole damn thing. You contacted everybody that was going to be in the, oh, that's okay, that's the way they wanted. So I contacted everybody I could think of that wanted to be in the parade. We had one very hell of a good parade. We had all the little kids right on up, the police and the firemen and the school teachers and the kids and the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts, everybody. We had a real good parade on Memorial Day.
Well, Shelley, I think this has been a very good time to spend together. Thank you very much.
Well, how did your service and experiences affect your life? I think probably Phyllis could tell you better than that, because it made me the same miserable old son of a bitch that I am, and that's the military's fault. She'll agree to that. But I don't know, Gary, what can I say? I don't drink, I don't smoke. I didn't in the military, man, that didn't do it. That didn't make me do that. How did your service and experiences affect your life? Well, I think it made me appreciate our country more. Maybe did your service and experiences affect your life? I have probably more respect for the flag. That sounds kind of corny maybe, but I couldn't wait to get a flagpole in our land here in our house in Durham and have a flag and fly it properly. Don't fly it at night and all that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Service and experience affect your life.
I think you've done extremely well today. Shelley, thank you so much.